All right, everyone. Welcome to your Unit 1 exam review for AP Micro. On this review, we're going to be covering the concepts of supply and demand, but also their determinants to change, as well as their elasticity. So what I want you guys to be focused on today is these simple concepts. Some of these questions are going to be easy chip shots. Other ones, you're going to have to take a few factors into account. So let's make sure you guys understand these concepts. So if we're going to start off, let's go ahead and make sure we understand what demand is. Demand, we always say the law of demand is what?
As the price goes up, quantity demanded decreases.
Right. That means as the price increases, the quantity demanded, as in if we start from A and go to B, that means as the price increases, we'll have this large quantity. However, if the price increases, we are going to have a smaller quantity. Does it work the opposite way? If I go from B to A, what will happen to the quantity? The quantity would increase. So price goes down, the quantity demanded increases. Now, price changes what again? Quantity demanded, it does not change what? Demand. So it does not create a change in demand. Does price shift the curve? No, it doesn't. It leaves the curve where it is. It moves up and down the curve. So you guys should be very capable in going from A to B, knowing things that, look, what would move us from A to B? Well, not price, but an increase in price would move us from A to B, and from B to A, a decrease. I hope questions like that are really easy. However, if we're going to go ahead and throw supply in there, we can go ahead and say, hey, if we're in equilibrium at B, what could get us to A if demand remains constant? Very good. An increase in supply could bring equilibrium to A. Because where are we always at in the market? Equilibrium. Unless someone has done something to make the market wrong. The market always wants to be in equilibrium. So in economics, we assume we are in equilibrium. All right. Moving on to some other concepts and questions. Let's talk about elasticity. So elasticity is what? What is it?
Reaction of something to the price increase or price decrease.
Right. It's how much price changes what? The quantity demanded or supply, depending on which one we're looking at. Now, a more elastic curve will be what? It'll be flatter. You guys should understand how that works because that means a price change from A to B will cause a large change in the quantity. So this is our difference, this is our difference. However, an inelastic curve would be one that would look like this. Here, I'll put D, inelastic, which means I can change from C to D, which is a big change. However, the quantity demanded here, or the price change is big, but the quantity demanded is much smaller. So that would be more inelastic. However, we should know better, because this is basic honors concepts, that every line is what? What can we say about every single demand curve? Elasticity is constant? Okay, it's always, it'll be negative, but is it constant? No, it's the opposite of that. Elasticity is always what? Right, it's always changing, okay? So, an example of what that means is at some point in the curve, we're at unit elastic. And at unit elastic, that means total revenues are what? Maximized. Everything above of unit elastic is what? Not inefficient, but everything above it is going to be inelastic? More elastic. Because elasticity means I make a small change in price and the quantity changes a lot, which means if I lower the price, the quantity demanded will change what? More. Not a lot, not a little, more. That's what elastic means. That means if I change the price 10%, the quantity demanded would be greater, therefore my total revenues will increase. And as I go down this line, all the way to this point, the curve becomes more and more what? Inelastic. Contrary, what would this be right here? Right, it'd be very inelastic, meaning I can increase my total revenues by doing what? Increasing the price. Because I increase the price, let's say 20%, but the quantity demanded would only change 10%. That means my total revenues would increase. That all happens until we get to our special point here, which is unit elastic. That means a 15% change in price will cause what kind of change in quantity demanded? Of 15%. And that's where total revenues are maximized. So that's your little question on elasticity. Let's go ahead and give you guys a question here. What happens if something was absolute value 0.8 elastic? What does that mean? It's not very elastic? Yeah, it's going to be elastic, inelastic, or uninelastic. Uninelastic would mean it's what? 1. Right? And if it's 1, then it's uninelastic. What if it's less than absolute value of 1? Inelastic. And if it's above 1? Elastic. You guys understand that? What's the formula for elasticity? Or at least price elasticity of demand? The short form is our percent change in Q over percent change in price. So that means if this is more than 1, if this ended up with 2 to 1, that means for every $1 I change in price, I would sell twice as many. That means it's what? That means it's elastic. If it was the other way, it was 1/2 or 0.5, that means for every $2 I change in price, people would only buy 1 more or less. That's half. Is that a good deal for total revenue? No, and therefore it's inelastic. Does that make sense to you guys? Any of you guys know how to solve for these percent changes? The big formula? Useful thing to have. Now, elasticity is more or less simple in and of itself. However, does it play a role when we start talking about who pays a certain burden in taxes? Yes, and we'll get to that tomorrow in class. So what happens if something was price inelastic? What would happen if I raise the price? Price inelastic. So this pen right here is priced inelastic. I raise the price. What will happen? What's that? It'll be an increase in total revenue, right? What if it was elastic? How can I increase total revenue if something's elastic? Lower the price, and the quantity will change even greater, and you'll have more total revenue. All right.
So for inelastic, the price increases total revenue. And if it's inelastic, the price decreases.
Say it again, and louder.
So for elastic, it's opposite. If the price increases, total revenue decreases. so price decreases, total revenue increases.
Well, the key is finding your unit elastic point. To get more total revenue inelastic, raise the price. To increase total revenue for elastic, lower the price.
Right, so that means that if it's inelastic and you lower the price, it decreases.
Decreases total revenue, yes. Remember that total revenue curve that I kind of want to go back to. That is really, okay. So it works that way. Here's the most total revenue we have. That's at unit elastic. That means everything on this side, if you ever go this way, that means you're moving this direction, or you're going down this line. Total revenue is always decreasing. So if I lower the price, then we go this way, and we'll always get less. If I increase the price, we'll move this way, and we'll get more total revenue. Same on this side of the curve. If I'm lowering the price, total revenue will increase. But then if I lower the price, total revenue will increase. But if I increase the price, we'd be up here, total revenue will decrease. Okay? Okay. So let's go ahead and give you guys a little problem to solve. All right. Things. All right. So we've got our PQSD, which means what should you probably do right now? Draw that. All right. So let's stick with the pens. Let's say pens are inelastic, okay? So pens are priced inelastic. What happens if I were to, I don't know, let's go ahead and say that the cost of putting ink in a pen has increased. What happens? Okay, step one. That's called ink is an input in pen, right? So, step one, and here, I'll go ahead and say the first things you guys do here is put your QE and PE. So that would make the supply increase or decrease? Decrease. Okay? So let's throw elasticity into this. Now, what will that mean will happen to price? Okay? That means price, or PE1, our price is now going to be here at PE2. And what's the quantity going to do? Decrease to QE2. Equilibrium. E is equilibrium. Very important to know what that QE and PE means. Because we always say the market's at equilibrium. Well, supply shifted. So we need to go ahead and put our supply 2 line on there. It has shifted. I've got a question. What happened to total revenue in this market or for this firm? It decreased. We increased the price. What did I say this good was? I said it was inelastic. The price increased. If you increase the price of an inelastic good, that means what? Total revenue would increase. Now, I know you guys are looking at this graph up here, and you're saying, hey, Mr. Wasmith, you brought it up in this zone right here. You said above this point. Why did I pick that point for unit elastic? Yeah. Is there some rule saying that's where unit elastic is? No, the numbers would determine it. How many numbers did I put up there? None. So I said this good is price inelastic, which means right about here, you would go ahead and say, well, let me just make my unit elastic point here if you feel like it. Because all of this is what? All this is going to be I'm sorry, my unit elastic point, I put it up here. All that's going to be inelastic, which means inelastic. We raise the price, what occurs? Increase in total. Okay, if I said increase in price, what occurs? And you said increase in price? No, it'd be an increase in
Total revenue.
total revenue. You guys understand that? How many different concepts do you have to understand to get this right? Is that a really good question if you're looking at it from a how well these kids understand this thing? Yes. So, do you need to know all your concepts? Yes, because some of them are, you need this, this, this. A lot of them are fundamental. Hey, that whole adding ink depends. Oh, that's a piece of cake. Splash, yes, price goes up, quantity decreases. Slam dunk. What does that mean if the demand is inelastic? Ooh. And what happens to total revenue if that's the case? Do you need to know more? So that's my introduction to the AP exam. Hey, do you understand about 3 to 4 concepts? Because you'll need to understand them all to get this right. But if you do understand them, is that hard? Shouldn't be. Work your way through it. Oh, do you guys have a lot of time to work your way through these? All right. Here's some questions that are tricky. We like to assume the market's always in equilibrium, right? Can the market ever be out of equilibrium? How long would that last? Not very long. So we'd like to say almost instantly it won't be. However, let's say I throw a question at you saying there's a, I don't know, what do you guys want this one to be, a supply shock or demand shock?
Supply shock.
All right, so we have some sort of supply shock. Is it going to be an increase in supply or decrease in supply? Okay, so let's say we increase supply. So this is a market for what? Market for shoes, okay? We said supply is going to increase by, because let's say we have a new trade deal that lowered tariffs. Shoes are made overseas. So that means, is that going to increase or decrease the supply of shoes? It's going to go ahead and increase the supply of shoes. So what would happen immediately, very, 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 very quickly, and not last very long? The market would be out of equilibrium. How so? Where would the market be? The market's going to be sitting right about here. But at that price, how many will be supplied? This new supply. Okay? Meaning, what will we have very quickly? A surplus. People will want to consume that many, however, suppliers are going to produce that many, and we get a quick surplus. Hey, all of a sudden I've got this big surplus of shoes. What would I do? I would then lower the price. If we lowered that price, we can get to here where we'll get back to equilibrium very quickly. You guys understand? So that's why we always get to equilibrium. Hey, if I have a bunch of shoes I can't sell, I need to sell. How do I sell things that people aren't buying? Right, I need to sell more, I lower the price. At a lower price, people will consume more, and I'm back to equilibrium. Make sense? Easy, easy steps. I don't like those because they're a little tricky because we always assume we're at equilibrium. So even if there is a change, we like to assume you're at equilibrium right quick. But how long will that surplus last? Very quickly. It will go away. All right. And here, let's throw this one at you. It's going to be, I think, really easy. All right. If this price was $30, what happens if all of a sudden I say, hey, now it's $25? What occurs? Well, if I just said it is $20, $25, what would occur? All right, very quickly, we get here where here's our new quantity. Here, quantity supplied. Here's the quantity demanded. Which one's bigger, the quantity supplied or quantity demanded? That means we will have a shortage. Okay? What would happen if we went up and said now it's going to be $40? What would we have? Right, here's the amount people would demand, and over here is how much people would supply. And that right there is right, here's the amount supplied, it's bigger than the amount demanded, we have a bunch left over. Is that pretty simple stuff? So is this question going to be one of the slam dunks? Are the other ones going to be harder? Yes, you guys have seen a little bit of both. All right. Will you guys have to solve your inelastic equations? I'll just say this now. Yes. Okay. Make sure you're ready for that.
Can you use an example of solving? Is that a test molding?
No. Yes, it is a test molding. Okay, let's say I change the price from $4. Let's use a different color. I change the price from $4 to $3. Okay. And I change my quantity is going to then change from, I don't know, 30 to well, this is demand. You guys want this to be demand? Let's go ahead and change it to 50. So, what is this good? Is it normal good? Can you know whether it's normal or inferior? You cannot. Does that matter? Right now, we're not changing income, so therefore, that doesn't matter. It does. I mean, shoes, pens, kites, doesn't matter. How would you? Do you guys need me to go over how to solve this? It's good to take them all right now and solve. I know a lot of people are staring, going, "Oh, explain how to do it, and I'll have it." Well, on the test, what happens if you, I don't know, goof up, and found out maybe you don't understand it? It's wrong. It should always be, for price elasticity of demand, it should always be negative. It will always be negative. Cross price elasticities, that's different. Elasticity of supply will always be positive. Because this is a decrease, that would be a negative change. This is an increase. Over here in the quantity, it's a positive change. A positive and a negative are going to be negative. Well, it's good if you do both, because one will give you the answer. I think this should take you 30 seconds. Mm-hmm. To find out whether it's elastic or inelastic or unit elastic, I think 30 seconds. To get the actual answer about whether you think it's what the elasticity is, that would be harder. That would take you probably a minute, 90 seconds, which is about as much time as you have. Have you guys solved yet? Yeah. All right, what'd you guys get? What's that? You guys also get 1.7? should be able to. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you get negative 1.7? But remember, we go absolute value just to make it easier for us because negative 1.7 is less than 1. However, absolute value is above, so we just keep absolute value. That means it's what? Elastic, okay? Make sure you can solve these things. You should make sure that this does equal 1.7, and that'll help you out. 1.75, is that what you guys? Is it above 1? Okay. Yes. Solve it out for you? All right. Do you know the formula? Only if you can tell me what the formula is. Elasticity is what we're doing right now. So we go Q2 minus Q1 over what? Okay? And then you put this all over what? Okay, so P2 minus P1. So if we solve this one, we'll get 20 over 40, which is going to be, well, we can just make it a number if we want now, right? So 8.5. And then this is going to end up being negative 1 over 3.5. Ooh, that becomes more complex. Do you guys want to cross multiply instead? Not myself out? Okay. So we need to do what? Flip it. Or cross multiply. What does it equal? Yeah, I was going to say 3.5. I was going to do it too. Right. So. And if you go 2 into 3, that's what? 1, 2 into 15? 7, remainder of 1, which would end up being. I hope this math isn't that difficult. Is memorizing the formula a little difficult? It should be, because 1, they're mirror images, and 2, it's that. This mirrors this, which mirrors this, which mirrors this. It's just minus over plus and 2, minus over plus and 2.
So is our answer minus is positive, right?
Right, we go absolute value, so we'll just kind of, there we go, and it's 1.75. It's 1.75 above or below 1?
Above.
It's above, and therefore it is what?
Elastic.
Elastic. Pretty darn elastic. And by the way, that's the effect that price will have. So that means if I lowered the price 1% or 1 unit, I would sell how many? Let's say I lowered the price 100 units. How many more would I sell? 175. So that's a good way to kind of understand the effect of elasticity because you can now use those numbers. All right, let's get away from some of that and get back to our graphs. We unwork all of our math. Okay. So, what about things like complements and substitutes? If we're working with demand, a complement is a good that'll be what? Bought with. It'll be a positive relationship. If the price of good A increases, what will happen to demand of good B? Decrease. So it's a positive relationship. No, I said for complements. Complements would be right. So DVDs and DVD players, okay? If the price of DVDs increases, what happens to the demand for DVD players? It would decrease. The reason it would decrease is DVDs are more expensive, you buy fewer DVDs, therefore you'll need fewer DVD players. What if they were substitutes? What's that really good example for substitutes? Butter and margarine. Because they'll tell you, hey, the demand for grass and the demand for umbrellas are substitutes. Does it really matter that it's grass and umbrellas? Could you just cross one out and say demand for butter, grass, and umbrellas, margarine? Will it still work the same? Like, the concept won't change. So don't get psyched out by the words they use. That's why I randomly use different words all the time, because it doesn't matter. Get the concept. Good X and good Y just confuse you. So, but if the price of butter increases, what happens to demand for margarine? It would increase. Okay? Meaning, what would happen to equilibrium price for margarine? Right. Our equilibrium price is going to increase. Our equilibrium quantity is also going to increase. Does that make sense to you guys? Just in case I ask you what will the effects be, make sure you're able to figure that out.
Will simultaneous shifts in supply and demand?
Yes. No, I'll get to those when we get to those. But yeah, simultaneous shifts will occur. All right. Oh wait, an increase in the demand for something will do what to the price? I increase demand. That'll raise the price. If I raise the price, that's a cue for suppliers to do what? Make more. Because for a supplier, do they care about the substitution effect of supply? Yeah. I mean, if you're growing tomatoes and strawberries, and all of a sudden the price of tomatoes is higher, what are you going to grow? We're going to grow, you get more forward, so you're going to grow more. So you can make tomatoes or strawberries. All of a sudden the price of tomatoes increases. You know, you grow more tomatoes, right? You say nuts to strawberries because they are substitutes. So make sure you guys understand that right then, what happens to your opportunity cost for strawberries? Right, the cost of making strawberries decreased, right? Because you gained so much work. The cost of making, the cost of making strawberries, actually, the cost of making strawberries increased, right? Because you get way more money with tomatoes. So since the cost increased, you'll more likely make tomatoes than make more costly strawberries. Does that make sense, or do I have to start over?
That makes sense.
Yeah, I was going to say start over, you don't get. So, tomatoes and strawberries. You're a farmer, your land, it can grow, here in Florida, can you grow tomatoes really well? Yes, you can. We're in Tampa, Florida. Can you also grow strawberries really well? Yes, they grow here very well too. So, you're constantly deciding each year, what am I going to grow, right? What happens if the price of tomatoes increases? You would grow what? And if I said why, you're probably going to say I made more money growing tomatoes. Not necessarily, because would someone still grow strawberries? Why? Just because they're crazy? Right, because they do better growing strawberries. But what happened to the opportunity cost of growing strawberries with an increase in the price of tomatoes? The opportunity cost has done what? No, it's increased. You're growing strawberries. You grow strawberries or tomatoes. So let's say you can make $100,000 growing strawberries or $50,000 growing tomatoes. So, what is the opportunity cost of growing strawberries? $50,000, okay? However, what if all of a sudden the price of tomatoes increased? Now that cost of growing tomatoes, you wouldn't earn $50,000, you'd earn $70,000, right? So you still make $100,000 growing strawberries, but now the opportunity cost of growing tomatoes, or I'm sorry, of growing strawberries has increased. What are you still going to grow? If you get $100,000 growing strawberries and $70,000 now for tomatoes, what are you going to grow? Still grow strawberries, but what did the opportunity cost do? It increased. Does that make sense? A little better? Good question. All right. Do I need to go over normal and inferior goods?
Yeah.
All right, let's do that real quick. Let's say this good, what do we want this good to be?
No. Oh,
Man.
Mozzarella sticks.
Okay. You like mozzarella sticks, but not cheese. Okie dokie. They'll come around. Cheese with bread on them, is that better?
cheese with bread on it?
All right. So, let's say mozzarella sticks are obviously an inferior good. So, what happens if income decreases? By the way, what would increase income? Things like what would cause a decrease in income? You guys just said human capital, new jobs, all the things that and government handouts, all the things that are exactly the opposite of what I just said. You thought I said increase, even though that's clearly a down. All right. How do I decrease income? People lose their jobs. What else? Increase in taxes. What if home values decrease? That means a recession. So those types of things can decrease income. So if incomes decrease, what will that cause to happen? Well, we said mozzarella sticks, our cheese is inferior. So, what would occur? Why do you think they buy more mozzarella sticks? What would occur though? Okay, it would be a what?
Increase in demand.
An increase in demand. So demand will increase. That's going to increase what in regards to mozzarella sticks? It is not going to increase supply. Because here's an important thing to remember. Does demand ever change supply?
No.
Never. A change in demand will cause a change in quantity supply, but that's because what happened? A change in demand will cause a change in okie dokie equilibrium, which means a change in price. A change in price, it causes a change in price. It increased. And a change in price causes changes in quantity. Okay, why is it quantity demanded? The amount of quantity supplied, because we went from here to here. So the quantity, the new equilibrium quantity, and the quantity demanded also will change because we're in a new equilibrium. Okay? Does that make sense?
So, if
For the inferior goods. Okay, got it? Are you sure? All right, everyone's got that? How well?
So, inferior goods can still be elastic and inelastic?
What's that? And every good will still be elastic and inelastic because that deals with the price. Notice it's an inferior good. Income went down, so that caused an increase in demand. which causes prices to increase. You go, oh, prices increase, that makes them poor. Yeah, it does, but we're going to assume the income effect is going to be stronger than the substitution effect. That is unless I add another good. Are you guys ready?
Yes.
All right. Mozzarella sticks. Say mozzarella sticks are complements with marinara sauce. Does that make sense? So this will be. So they are complements. All right. All right. What's going to happen to our market for marinara sauce? Well, if income decreases, and I'll work you guys here. If income decreases, and this is an inferior good, demand, as we saw here, is going to increase. That increase in demand will cause a what? An increase in price. So that means we have an increase in price for our cheese sticks, and if they're complements, what does that mean? A decrease in demand for marinara sauce. Causing what to happen to the price and quantity of marinara sauce? Okay? You have our 2E2 and our PE2. Does it matter that marinara sauce is inferior or normal? Well, it could if income decreased. But let's assume it's normal. Okay, so how do you guys feel about this? No? What's that? Why would it go down? So they're complements. So if you're buying mozzarella sticks, you're buying marinara sauce. If mozzarella sticks are more expensive, you would probably buy fewer mozzarella sticks, therefore you buy less marinara sauce, right? Does that make sense?
What about the income elasticity of if it's positive, the
Income elasticity of demand is to determine whether a good is elastic or, income elasticity is whether it's normal or inferior, okay? So that's one to calculate, know what is what positive, what negative is, because that's what matters. Everything else is just kind of how much it is or how much of a change it'll make. So it's almost the same formula, but I don't want to get into it because we really don't see that much stuff. Is this just a no, I don't understand this one bit? Or is it, you guys kind of got it? Okay. So know how the multiple steps work. I don't even know how to give you a practice problem on that one. I think it's just too easy. Okay. Oh, wait, what are some things that can also increase demand besides substitutes, income? Consumer expectations is one. Do you expect the price to increase? How much do you buy now? Do you expect to increase in the future? How much do you buy now? More. Why do you buy more? Cheaper now than it will be in the future. So you stock up. Does that work the same with supply? If the price is going to increase in the future, how much will you supply now? Less. So it would be a decrease in supply. Does that mean you just stop production, shut your factory down? No, you keep producing, you just wouldn't offer it for sale. Because supply how much you made? Supply is how much you're offering for sale. So you keep making it, you just hold it, and when the price goes up, you release it. Does that make sense? All right. What's another thing that can increase demand? Number of consumers. I increase the number of people, they'll demand more. I decrease the number of consumers, they'll demand less. And what else? What do you mean popularity? If the good is in or not. Speak economics to me, man. I know what you're trying to say, but economics over here doesn't understand you. I'm sorry, what did she say? I couldn't hear her. More taste. Just add more flavoring into the mozzarella stick. No, it's a change in consumer taste. Very good. Or advertising. So all of a sudden I say, hey, did you guys know that consuming more... Did you guys know consuming mozzarella sticks all of a sudden makes you more likely to be obese and get cancer? What do you guys do? What will happen to the graph? You will consume less. What if all of a sudden research comes out and says, hey, guess what? Mozzarella sticks have lots of saturated fat. And right now, saturated fat's good for you. What do? You buy more. Okay? So that's how that works. I hope you guys know how to compute substitutes and complements. That's easy. Do you guys know about substitutes for supply and substitutes and complements of supply? Okay, is that a yes or no? You guys understand them?
For supply, can you explain the leather and
Leather and steak. All right, if I increase the price of steak, what will happen to the supply of leather?
how they increase? Because you want to supply more leather than you get.
If the price of steak increases, people want to supply more steak. However, steak and leather are what? Complements of supply. So as I make more steak, I just so happen to make more. So I'll make more leather, and that means supply will increase. And that means I'll make more leather, and I'll even charge you a lower price. Right? Now, if there were substitutes, it would be the opposite. Okay? If substitutes like tomatoes and strawberries, if I increase the price of strawberries, what happens to the market of tomatoes? Right, you make more strawberries, and therefore the market for tomatoes would decrease. Because they're substitutes and not complements. So, will it tell you what the good is? Yes, if they're common substitutes, it will be listed. So make sure you guys do understand that. And you guys understand what inferior goods are and how they work? All right. Let's just focus on a few more supply-centric questions. There aren't many, and then we'll be finished. All right.
About 35.
All right. What are the things that can shift supply? Change in input prices. We cost that. Remember, supply is all about cost. If I increase the cost of inputs, the ink that goes into my pens, I will supply less. Which way does curve move? Moves to the left. When the input prices are cheaper, I will supply more. All right, what are other things that can change supply? Consumer expectations, I think we covered that. What else? Complements and substitutes as well, and technology. A new technology makes it what to produce? Easier to produce. So, a new technology would do what to supply? Shift it which way? To the right, okay? What would a tax do? It would decrease it. That increases my costs, I will produce less. What would undo a tax? A tax is the government saying, pay me money to make something. What's the opposite of that? A subsidy, when the government says, I'm going to pay you to make something. What does that do to your cost?
Lowers cost.
Lowers your cost? So that would increase your supply and take you over here.
Regulate subsidies lower the price for the market.
Well, if a subsidy will increase supply, what happens to our market price? Our market price will be lower.
Subsidies are good.
If you're a supplier, yeah. Would you like to be paid more to do a thing? Yeah. So you'd love that. Would you like to be charged money to do a thing? So that means that would be bad. And what else? We also have things like productivity. If I increase productivity, you will supply more. Okay? If I decrease productivity, you will supply less. Anything else? Well, then that would be a productivity determinant there. And what else did you guys say in the back? I'm sorry, we can't hear you on the other review. Number of producers. If I increase the number of producers, that would do what to supply? Increase it. If I reduce the number of consumers, that would decrease it. Very good. Also, increasing regulations. Regulations to a producer are a what? Cost. So, if you're a producer, do you like it when people are, hey, do it this way, and check this, and also come here and make me do it all these other ways? Does that help you produce? No, that means you'll get a what? If I increase regulations, that'll make supply decrease. What if I reduce regulations? You hear a lot of political candidates saying, let's reduce regulations, because they want what to happen? An increase in supply. Okay? Now, am I saying regulations are never effective and terrible and we should get rid of them? Are they saying they're always great and always help everyone? No, but I'm saying here's the effect of regulations on a market. So that's pretty good. Yes, and that's something I'll cover in class tomorrow. I'll try to record it the first period, so if I don't finish, I'll record it then the second period, and I'll post that. All right, and lastly, will there be what we call factor markets, things about the market for labor, market for capital? Yes, simple example. We're going to get way more complicated with them later. But if you're a worker, are you a supplier or a demander? Right, you supply more labor. That means the businesses are now what? Consumers. So make sure you understand how those shift. If I increase the price of labor, if I increase wages, you will do what? If I increase wages, you would do what? Supply more labor. If I decrease the price of labor, you will supply less. And does this market work the same way? What if all of a sudden I cut your income taxes? What would you guys do? You would what? You'd work more, and that would cause an increase in supply. What if I increase your taxes? You would work less, and that will cause a decrease in supply. That make sense, class? All right. Do you guys have any more questions on supply and demand determinants? We still have a good chunk to cover about taxes and everything, so make sure you guys pay attention to those reviews. I'll try to post maybe last year's stuff too. So you guys have a chance to put up that stuff, and I hope that's something you guys can use. Yes?
So you want us, when we draw it out, you want us to exaggerate whether it decreases or increases?
Well, you can, if you want, you can go ahead and make a supply shift huge to here. You can also make it small to right there. Does it really matter conceptually? No, I'd say make it big enough you can see it. But if it's a simultaneous shift, that it's an increase in supply and an increase in demand, well, did demand go to here or did demand go to here? The answer is, all right, I increased demand. Did I increase it this much or did I increase it this much? Because it matters a lot. Which one did I increase it? Generally, they'll say what? Okay. Let me give you guys an example. So let's say I have demand here. I can increase demand. I can increase demand to 0.1, or I can increase demand to 0.2. At 0.1, you'll notice that what happened to the price, because I already increased my supply curve. Okay, I already moved it over here. Well, supply increased, so did demand. What happened to the price if I go to D1? It what? I can't hear it when you guys like the price increased? It would decrease. Oh, what happened at D2? Price increase. Okay, correct. So if I said that, would I tell you it increased a little and one increased a lot? I'd say they both increase. What happens to quantity? Quantity increases. What happens to price? Indeterminate. You can't tell. So make sure you go ahead and like take those lines and even in your mind, if you want to draw two, go for it. Or you can kind of just shift them a little bit and see exactly what happens. Does that make sense? So don't freak out about them, but do be cognizant. If you're shifting both curves, does it matter how much they shift? Yes, so be careful and go, what would it do? Wait, I can't tell. It depends. Then it's indeterminate. But we definitely know that on either point, quantity increase.
If supply increases and demand decreases, price increases.
So, if we're here and demand decreases, what would that do to price? Does it matter how much I move it? No. Price will decrease. What happens to quantity?
It also reduces.
See? So it could be, quantity could be here, or quantity could be here. The answer is, we don't know, so that would be indeterminate. Does that make sense to everyone? Are there any other questions?
I was saying like if one increase and one decrease.
I already did that. So, I mean, if you want me to, if supply increases and demand decreases, we know price will go down, but it depends on where. Okay, so be indeterminate. Any other questions?
That's a lot.
All right. So guys, good luck on your exam. Remember, is this something you want? Is this something you guys want to take lightly? I strongly recommend you don't. It is a huge chunk of your grade. Can change it a bunch. Good luck, everyone.